Hi guys, Johnny V from JV Design and welcome back to the channel. Now today we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm in the middle of completing my latest 3D print and hopefully the video will be up for that within the next week or so. But in the meantime, I just want to do a short video and I've got a product review for this excellent detail airbrush. And this is a Creos 771, sometimes called a Mr. Hobby Creos 771. So you can find it under a couple of different names. Now, I was in the market for a new detail airbrush and I'm going to have a look at how I actually arrived to deciding on this particular one. I'm also going to have a look at a little bit of a test spray and also what comes in the box. Now I will say my channel is just started and I certainly don't have the traction to be able to be sent any of these sort of things for free. So this one I purchased with my own money. I'm not selling this for Creos or for anybody, but I am going to have a look at why I arrived to this particular one. So guys, stay with me and we're going to have a look at the Creos 771. So as I've already stated, I actually paid for this on my own. I'm not sponsored by anybody, and I had three different brands that I wanted to look at: the Iwata custom Micron, this guy here, the Creos 771, and also the harder and Steenbeck Infinity. Now, I had a little bit of issue. The main thing with the Micron, I've always wanted a Micron. The major issue that to get them in Australia, it's going to cost about $800 to $850, which is a little bit out of my budget just at the moment. It's not to say that I wouldn't get one down the track if I was able to afford it, but for the time being, that one's just a little bit out of my price range as much as I love them. I think they work fantastic as well, and I'd say the price is probably the biggest con there. Now, this particular brush, there are some people that say this is made in the same factory as the Iwata custom Micron. I can't confirm or deny that, but the parts seem to fit very, very well together. And this is essentially a custom Micron at about a third of the price. Now, I bought this from Spray Gunner and I got this delivered to Australia at my doorstep in about 1 week from America to Australia, and with shipping costs and everything, it came to $319. Now, my local hobby store, I always try to support local where I can, but they had this for $500. So it's almost a $200 difference. And that for me online was just too good. And I was also able to buy a spare needle with it. So it was very, very worth it for me. Now, again, all the parts, once I've had it, it feels very much in my hand like a custom Micron, so I'm absolutely thrilled for it. And probably the biggest thing that I love is that there's no trigger lag. Now, that was the one thing that put me off the harder and Steenbeck. They are phenomenally built. They are beautifully built, and they have a lot of parts that are very easily accessible and easy to get, and they come apart really easy. But with the Infinity that I tried, and I believe there's a 24 model coming out, which this may be fixed, I just found that there was a bit of trigger lag, and that wasn't something that I was a big fan of. I'm not a beginner airbrusher, and I could actually find I found that a little bit unresponsive. So I know there's a fix for it, but when I'm spending sort of $300 plus on an airbrush, I'm of the opinion that I shouldn't have to fix it. And with the Creos, I didn't have to fix that, and the trigger response was excellent. So very, very happy with that. So at the end of the day, what I looked at is what I'm trying to get out of my airbrush, and in this case I wanted a very good fine detail airbrush with great trigger control. I also had to sum up and have a look at the three best options in that market for myself, have a look at availability of parts, have a look at the overall cost of the unit, and try to come up with the best idea for me. And for me, I really looked at all of them quite intensively. I tried to do quite a bit of homework when I look at these things, but this Creos kept coming up for me as probably the best buy because it was very much a custom Micron at a third of the price, had great trigger control, and while the parts aren't super easy to get, you can get them quite comfortably from Spray Gunner, and so far I've been absolutely thrilled with it. But the bottom line is there is nothing wrong with any of those other airbrushes. If you go with any of them, you're going to be in for a really good time. Okay, Okay guys, so we're going to have a little look what's in the box. So as you can see, pretty basic box over here, just a nice purple box, pretty simplistic instructions in there, but we've got some instructions nevertheless. Over here we actually have a plastic case it comes in. I'd love to see that being maybe metal or something a bit more durable, but at the same time it gives us something to store our airbrush in. This is just the lid of the airbrush, very, very simple. I tend to paint without it, but it's very handy to have there as well. And this is also a plastic nib you can put over the front, which is also very, very handy. And of course, you get your spanner tool when you need to change anything through the nozzle. Now, you also get a very small hose. I tend to use my own hose through there. This is a spare needle. These come with a 1.8 needle, which is very, very fine, and I actually got this from spraygunner.com. This does not come with it. I had to order that separately, and I think it's always handy, particularly when they've got a specific needle. It was really important for me to have a spare needle because very, very easy to bend these on any airbrush. So I tend to be a bit rough-handed at times, so I always make sure that I've got a spare needle there as well. Now, if we look down to the airbrush itself, this is a beautiful looking airbrush, okay? It's got some really, really good length at the back, which is excellent because within that, it really sits in the hand well, and I love the weight of this, and I really like the length and the weight of this is fantastic. You have your little Mac valve at the front, and you can adjust that to make the spray pattern a little bit easier straight from the gun. I really like that. Some people don't, but I really like it, particularly if I'm trying to get some speckling effect on some flesh tones. I find that really, really handy to have right on the brush. And if you're inclined, you can also use this adjustment at the back, and this makes the trigger not travel as far. For me personally, I like to have that unloaded all the way. I like the trigger to travel, and I like to adjust that myself through my own control. But that's totally up to the individual, and that may be a handy thing for you as well. There's a window here so you can see what's going on with the needle. Again, whether that's there or not isn't a huge concern for me, but it's there nevertheless. Now, if you're a fairly astute airbrush observer, you might find that this looks a little bit odd if you have seen this airbrush before, and that's because I've customized this ever so slightly. So what I've done is this here is actually a trigger from a custom Micron, so an Iwata custom Micron. The airbrush comes with a trigger with a very similar round base to this. This is actually from an Iwata Neo. I couldn't find the exact one. I've put it down somewhere and can't find it, but it comes with a more of a round trigger, very, very similar to this. There is nothing wrong with the trigger that it comes with, okay? It's an excellent trigger. I just absolutely adore the custom Micron trigger, so I've swapped it out. Now, within that, what we also find is that the custom Micron bits work very, very well with this, and they seem to be able to be very adaptable to taking them in and out of this brush. So custom Micron and this particular brush seem to work hand in hand all the parts. The other thing I've done is I've put a nozzle that also comes from an Iwata Neo, and this actually does come with one of these small nozzles, which I really do like, but with the little grooves in there, I tend to like to backflush this quite a bit, particularly when I'm changing colours or just to clean it out. And I find that the little nozzles tend to leak a bit of air. So I just put this airbrush cover on. When I put my finger over and backwash it, it just seems to work a little bit easier. Again, nothing wrong with that particular nozzle, but I just prefer to make my job a little bit easier with that. So that's what you'll see in the box, and we're going to go now have a look at a little bit of an airbrush test and see what we come up with. So guys, being a detail airbrush, it is true some people have a little bit of trouble mixing the paint, and they feel that it has to be a little bit more watered down, which is definitely true because you're bringing it through a smaller opening. I don't have too much trouble with that. What I find first is that I use my thinner, my airbrush thinner, and what I do is I just put about 3 drops of that in, and then make sure that your paint's shaken up, and I go with about the same. So I usually try to use the same with that there as well. 3 little drops of the same. From there, you can mix it around, and all I do is give it a flush by pressing on the cap, and you can hear it bubble. And then from there, just giving it a quick spray on my hand to see if it comes out. Now, if it's a little bit too watery, you can just add another drop of paint, and if you need a little bit of extra thinner, you can just add that by the drop. But that's how I go about it, simple as that. So when we're actually painting, and we're just doing some test painting here, I've got my PSI on about 20, so it's not too high. So I've kept it really quite low, and we can see we can get some really super fine lines. Now I've taken the cap off my airbrush. You got to be very, very careful of that, but when I flush it I tend to put it back on, so you can get these really nice fine lines the closer you go, and we can see we can get some really simple, just go with cursive writing, and we can get some really simple work, and we can see that looks really, really quite nice. We can get some fine lines. We want to come a bit further away from the page. We can get some softer stuff and thicker lines. You can see you might not be able to pick it up, but it's splattering just a little bit, and that just means I might have to put another drop of thinner in there as well, which is very, very simple to do. If I do that, I just simply backwash it and go from there. But with our testing, we can see we can get some beautiful fine lines. And what I love about this particular brush is that it's got great trigger control. The moment I pull down, there's no sort of lag or anything like that with the trigger lag. It's got a really, really good soft bit. We can spray it quite a bit if we want to from here, and we can see that we can get nice and dark. And if you want to do simple build-ups, you can keep it really, really soft as well. And then the closer you go with your dots, you can get it where it's super fine and get right to the page and get those really, really easy lines. So this is a fantastic brush, and we can see that I've used a lot of different things here, and you can get so many different types of work, but you can get everything from the finest detail all the way to some thicker stuff as well. So it's a really responsive airbrush, and I'm actually really, really enjoying it. This Mac valve, you can actually close this up a little bit, so if you are going for a splattering paint effect, you can close that up, a little bit less air, and you can see that it splatters you. Again, I'm not sure if you can pick it up, but it splatters far more as well. And sometimes we're actually going for that. Sometimes we're actually going for that look, and we want to have some splatter. It might be that you're doing some flesh tones that we want some splatter, and we can go from there. But such a nice soft airbrush, and this is me just simply having fun with it and painting some super fine lines, and really, really happy with that basic test. So as you can see, brush in hand, it looks absolutely fantastic. So guys, thanks for sticking with me and having a look at the Creos 771. If I was to give this a rating, I would actually give this a 9 out of 10. This is one of the finest airbrushes I've used. It's an absolute beauty, and I would recommend this to absolutely anyone in the market for a detail airbrush. Now, with detail airbrushes, guys, I will say they do take a little bit of time to get the paint consistency right and to get some of that control right. So for a beginner, you might look at something perhaps like an Iwata Eclipse, something like that. But if you are in the market, this is absolutely fantastic. Now, some of the pros with this, trigger control is absolutely beautiful, okay? It is responsive. I really like the Mac valve as well. Some do, some don't. And you also have trigger control at the back here as well. It's really, really well put together, and all the parts on it just work beautifully. The other really good thing about this, if you do have a custom Micron or you do want to put some custom Micron parts, they seem to be really compatible and fit in there really, really well. If I'm looking at some things that I could think in the future might be really good to do, I'd love it if this cup would maybe screw off and you could put a smaller cup on there as well. I know there are some brushes that do that. That might be a really good option. The other thing is just the packaging that it comes in. Maybe just something like a metal box, that would be excellent. Because I say, as the plastic box that you get with it is pretty flimsy, but at least it is something to store it in. But if you had maybe a metal box or just something a little bit better that way, that would be nice to go from there. Now, again, I really like this custom Micron trigger that I've sort of customized this one with, but the trigger on there is fine as well, so any way you want to go. So as I say, I've compared this to the Iwata custom Micron and also the Harder and Steenbeck Infinity, but for me, this Creos 771 is the best of both worlds. It's got everything that you want out of a Micron, which is would be my pick of airbrush if I could find something. But this is basically a custom Micron at about a third of the price. I think its trigger response is better than the Infinity from the Infinities that I've tried, but all of these three airbrushes are fantastic airbrushes. Either way that you're going to go, you're going to have a good time out of it, and you're going to get a really fantastic airbrush. So guys, thanks for sticking with me. I'm going to continue with this and hopefully get a new video up for you very, very shortly. I'm not going to tell you exactly what that is, but stay tuned and I'll have my next 3D print for you from JB Designs. See you soon, guys. Take care.